Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Stutzman. I'm a campaign strategist with the ACLU's Redemption Campaign, a nationwide effort to encourage the president and governors to use their clemency powers to reduce mass incarceration and remedy long-standing injustices in our criminal legal system. I'm so excited to be here today for Correcting Injustice 2, a continuation of an event that the ACLU first held at Princeton University last year. Seeing this conversation with such an accomplished panel to discuss clemency in the criminal legal system is truly remarkable. Firstly, my thanks to the University of Michigan for hosting and to the Michael Thompson Clemency Project for organizing this event. It is thanks to their hard work that we can have this meaningful and long overdue conversation. A quick administrative announcement, we are handing out question cards. If you would like to submit questions, volunteers will be collecting them shortly. But most importantly, I want to introduce to you our moderator for the evening, Hill Harper. You may recognize Mr. Harper from shows like CSI and The Good Doctor, but you may not know that he is also an author, has a bachelor's from Brown, a JD from Harvard Law, a master's of public administration from the Kennedy School at Harvard University, and 8 honorary degrees. He can put us all to shame. Mr. Harper has a wealth of experience that ranges from serving on President Obama's cancer panel to founding mentorship programs, creating financial literacy tools, and more. Notably, the topics we are here to discuss today have an additional resonance for Mr. Harper, who wrote the critically acclaimed Letters to an Incarcerated Brother after receiving letters from incarcerated youths and recognizing a need for hope and mentorship for incarcerated community members. With that, join me in welcoming Mr. Hill Harper.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful introduction, everybody. I very rarely get to come onto college campuses, and being here kind of reminds me of my days in Brown and Harper. In these hallowed halls, it brings me back to want to speak to an affected accent like this, like I'm sure I talked when I was in college. But what's happening, you guys? This is an important conversation. We have an incredibly esteemed panel, folks that are super experienced in this subject, but beyond that, truly and deeply care about it, even more important, and in many ways have been previously affected. Before I jump in and actually do sort of a set the stage or informational piece, I want each panelist to introduce themselves so you hear from them first, and then I will jump into kind of a game setting definition session and then jump into some questions. So Michael?
Yeah, Michael Thompson. I'm looking at all the people. I'm just shocked and touched that all the people that showed up, and especially the ones that did a lot of years, but I'm the head of Michael Thompson Clemency Project.
Good afternoon. Kate Brown is my name. I go by the pronoun she, her, hers, and I am just retired from being the 38th governor of the great state of Oregon. That's on the West Coast.
Yes.
My name is Savit. I use he, him pronouns, and in addition to the most important things about me, which that I am a graduate of this law school and still teach here, I am the Washington County prosecuting attorney.
It's conveyed to me that there are folks here with different ranges of experience and knowledge around issues around expungement clemency and et cetera. So, why don't we do a quick little definition of terms, because some people have said to me that they get a little confused between the difference between expungement, clemency, and pardon, et cetera. So as a level set going into the discussion, wanted to do that. So in the state of Michigan, expungement, clemency, and pardon are all legal processes that can have different effects on a person's criminal record. Expungement is a process that allows a person to have certain criminal convictions removed or sealed from their public record. And this means that the conviction will not show up on a background check, and the person can legally deny that they were ever convicted of that crime. or so-called crime. However, not all convictions are eligible for expungement, and there are certain waiting periods and other requirements that must be met before an expungement can be granted. Clemency is a process by which the governor of Michigan can reduce or modify a person's sentence or grant them an early release from prison. This can be done for a variety of reasons, such as to correct an error in the criminal justice system, to provide mercy in cases of extreme hardship or illness, or to reward good behavior. Clemency does not necessarily remove or seal a person's criminal record, but it can have a significant impact on their sentence and their ability to reintegrate into society. And we will be talking about categorical clemency, which is a term that falls under that clemency banner. Now, pardon is a process by which the governor of Michigan can completely forgive a person for a crime and remove the conviction from their record. Unlike expungement, a pardon is granted at the discretion of the governor, and there is no guarantee that the pardon will be granted, even if a person meets all the eligibility requirements. Pardons are typically granted only in cases where there is strong evidence of rehabilitation and the person has demonstrated good behavior and a commitment to turning their life around, or they just know the right people and have some things. But that's just me adding that in. In summary, expungement, clemency, and pardon are all legal processes that can have different effects on a person's criminal record. In the state of Michigan, expungement removes all and seals all sorts of convictions. So let's jump into this discussion. Michael, will you just break down to us, why is it so important to you to fight so hard to bring a categorical clemency program here to the state of Michigan?
Well, mainly, as I look through the room, I see Phil Hunt's sister. He's been in prison for 55 years, 57 years. And clemency is very important. That's the only way thing gonna save it. Or pardon, just like you just mentioned. But then you have people like Horace Peterson, been there 50-some years. And his record just got out.
Take your time.
His record just got out. And I'm looking at how his record got out, and he haven't got out. He didn't pull no gun. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have no intentions of hurting nobody. But that's the reason why that clemency is very important. What the governor done, I salute her. I mean,
we're gonna get to her in a second.
Yeah.
Tell us about your story for folks who don't know, real quick.
Well, mine is but first I want to make sure that you understand the reason why I'm about clemency. The question that you asked me, and what it is you got people that got an education, when you got their doctor's degree, and what harm would they be to someone? They family sent them pay money for a doctor's degree. What harm would they be to anyone? And people like Leroy Washington, and people like Mark Perrin, people like it's just so many I can name. But what I'm saying to you is this, man. This is why it's so important for you to hear what I'm saying. This is no game. You know what it is. You know what it takes to straighten this out. Every 10 years you do a study. You do a study and then you don't do nothing about it. You do studies and pay all this money to all these people. Millions of dollars. And you do nothing. Usually when a study takes place, usually it'll be a solution. They know what the solution is. And my thing is, there's a lot of people suffering in there, man. They hurting. Think about you doing 40, 50 years. That shit hurts, man. And if it wasn't for people like the Last Prison Project, Cresco Lab and all of them that helped me, Man, I've been homeless. I've been probably been underneath the bridge somewhere, trying to survive. It ain't easy trying to survive after you done did 25 years. And it's definitely not easy when you done did 50 years. Listen, I don't care what nobody tell you. If anybody done over 20 years, something done happened to them. I don't care what nobody tell you, how they try to sugarcoat it. Something done happened to you, because it happened to me. And that's the reason why clemency, to me, is needed here.
Having granted 45,000 marijuana pardons and commutations and pardons to an additional 1,147 people, more than all of Oregon's governors from the last 50 years combined. What is your advice? What is your advice to other governors considering categorical clemency programs?
Well, thank you, and I'm just delighted to be here and so honored to be sharing the stage with my colleagues, but in particular, Mr. Thompson, whose leadership and courage are really extraordinary, and just want to support his work in every way possible, and the team at the Michael Thompson Clemency Project. So first of all, there are a couple things you need to know about me. Number one, I absolutely believe that our criminal justice system in this country was built on the backs of Black and brown people to keep them down. That is the lens through which I view this work. The second thing is I absolutely believe that the single most powerful tool that a governor has to be able to embed justice and fairness and equity in our criminal justice system is her or his clemency powers. As you know from my experience as governor, I exercised it wisely and I exercised it widely. And so my advice to governors out there who are listening, I have several sort of lessons learned. Number one, build a team of talented people who are really committed to doing this work. It is not easy work, but you need folks that are committed and very engaged and willing to stand up to a lot of public pressure. The second thing is it's incredibly important to build a communication strategy. And this is a really hard thing to do. It's really important to work around timing issues, and I'm happy to speak to that further. But the challenge on the ground right now is that there is this ethos out there, and we just saw it, I think this morning, Governor DeSantis in Florida wanting to eliminate non-unanimous juries for the death penalty in Florida. So it is incredibly difficult right now, and so timing is everything. The other thing that I learned, and this was one of the lessons, the hard knocks lessons, is that you have to build a support team, a group of allies, a group of folks that are going to support you in this work. And that doesn't mean just sending you thank you notes and making phone calls, but folks who are willing to speak out into the community and send letters to the editor and call up other elected officials that might be critical of your work. And I would encourage governors to include what I would consider non-traditional allies, like, for example, the business community and the faith community can be incredibly important. And I'll just say this because I think there's also sexism in our world today, and that is women governors in particular need male validators. Two of the things that are absolutely essential in this process is to ensure that there is a consistent and clear process for notifying the victims. And in Oregon, in my state, the statute requires that the district attorney do that notification process. And most of our district attorneys' offices have, I'll say, trauma-informed, culturally responsive folks on their teams that can do this work. But we weren't always sure that the work was actually being done out of the district attorney's office. So ensure that the victim notification is consistent and fair. The other thing that I think is really important is that as you are doing categorical clemencies, to make sure that there are safety plans in place, that the folks who are being released have a really clear plan for housing, support, treatment, all of the pieces that we know folks need to be successful once they leave the prison system. And that, of course, means family and friends as well. So want to make sure that those support systems are in place so that people can be successful. But this is an incredibly important tool. I'm really proud of my governors across the country that are using it for different purposes. Terry McAuliffe did it to enfranchise folks who were felons and had served their time and enabled them to register to vote. Other folks are doing it with the death penalty. This is really courageous work. And for folks who are doing it, you absolutely need to put on your metal underpants and stick to your principles.
Thank you. As a county prosecutor, how could Washtenaw County be affected by categorical clemency, and what benefits do you think it offers the community?
Well, sure. So I'll just start with the basics. As the prosecutor, right? And this is true across the country, I believe. We stand up in court and we say, we represent the people, right? We represent all the people in the community. That's what every criminal case is captured, the people versus such and such. And that means, of course, taking stock of the victims of crime, taking stock of the broader community, but it also means taking stock of the person that you're prosecuting and their family, because they're from your community as well. Now, the benefit of clemency from a prosecutor's perspective is simply this, that we as prosecutors, we're lawyers. We're not like magic soothsayers, future seers, right? I can't see into the future and know what somebody is going to be like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Think about where you were if you're even that old, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and how your life and yourself has changed in ways that you might not have expected, right? When we see people and we get convictions and we get these sentences, we are seeing people at a snapshot in time when they have done probably what is the worst thing that they are going to do in their life. And, well, actual innocence is a different case, right? And of course, that is the biggest miscarriage of justice that anybody can make, is to send somebody to prison that didn't do it. But talking about presumably if they did it, right? We still only see them at that snapshot in time, right? And when we don't have safety valves like clemency, like communications, right? We take away all hope of redemption, all hope of rehabilitation, all hope that somebody is going to change, which is precisely what we should want them to do. I mean, it's called the correction system, right? So if somebody has corrected themselves, has put in the hard work, notwithstanding what the prosecutor and the judge might have thought 20, 30, 40 years ago, let's give them that second look. Let's give them that second chance. That's the system working if they've earned it, right? If they've demonstrated that they don't pose a threat to the community anymore. So what are the benefits to the community? It means people coming home. It means people reunited with their loved ones. It means sons and daughters not having to experience the vicarious trauma of visiting their mothers and their fathers and only seeing them through metal prison bars, of being able to only, hug and kiss them after they go through a metal detector search and go into a prison. You want to talk about intergenerational effects? believe me, that traumatizes young people, right? And trauma leads to hurt people hurting people. And so that leads to actually more crime, right? Among the younger generation. If you can bring people home that, don't pose a safety risk and allow them to hug their children again, why wouldn't we do that for the community? Now, I know categorical commutation is different than the individualized approach, which I support, which I've been talking about in the main. But like categorical, I mean, you can talk about marijuana convictions. I mean, for the love of God, like my view on this is pretty simple. Like, it's not a crime in Michigan anymore, right? Why on earth? Why would you have a criminal record for something that's not a crime anymore? It doesn't make sense to me, right? And to Michigan's credit, like the automatic expungement laws kicked in last week, which is big. Yeah, right. So that's why folks say a lot. I mean, 1.2 million Michiganders got their criminal records cleared or partially cleared on the first day. That's more than 1 out of every 10 people in the state of Michigan. So that's great. But there's a waiting period for that, right? 7 or 10 years. And I don't care if you were convicted of a marijuana offense, 5 years ago. It's legal now. So why is that holding you back? To say nothing of if you're, and I'm talking about just records, right? To say nothing of if you're serving time for that. Where is the justice in that? Where right now people are making millions upon millions of dollars legally. So just as I can't see into the future as a prosecutor in terms of like what a person's going to be like 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the future, I'm sure my predecessors who they may have thought that marijuana was the devil leaf, right? Which I don't think that, right? But they couldn't have anticipated the way society was going to move in 20, 30, 40, 50 years with respect to marijuana. And we need to have the humility as prosecutors to understand not just the people change, but the society changes and embrace commutation to take stock of those changes. Right. Thank you for that. I saw you exhale for a second. So you want to share what you were thinking?
Yeah. What he's saying is right on point. Hey man, a person that committed a crime 30 years ago is not the same person anymore. When he committed that crime and the person he is today, that's not the same person, man. And people need chances, man. So, and my thing is this. You lock a person up, and what you want to do? Throw away the key. When is enough is enough. Right. When somebody tell me, when is enough enough? Right. Now. Right. We live in America. America, you can do better. Amen. You can do better.
I want us to all publicly recognize right now a man who was just freed from prison on March 14, 2023, following a Christmas Eve commutation from Governor Whitmer of draconian 60 to 100 year sentence for stealing $18. He is here in attendance with us after surviving 40 years of incarceration in Michigan prisons. Just think about that for just 1 second. $18, a sentence of 60 to 100 years, was in for 40 years, just came out March 14th of this year. Right. And he's sitting in here with us right now. That is Jimmy Bird. Please stand up. Welcome home, Jimmy. Welcome home. So I know many of you may have questions, comments. There were cards handed out. this is a good time to pass them to the center. Folks will collect them and bring them up here, and we'll get them in queue for the time we have. And so I want to just put this out to the panel now, and obviously anything you all want to add based off what's already been said, but you know, let's talk about the impact of clemency on the actual families and the communities of returning citizens. Can we talk about how? Yeah, I think, you know, Mr. Prosecutor, you kind of, you know, laid it out there that it impacts generationally. But can we kind of go deeper into that and talk about it? Because oftentimes it seems that discussions happen to do with the individual and the so-called offender, but there's very little talk, and maybe this speaks to your messaging, Governor, there's very little talk or messaging about the overall family and community impact that categorical clemency or individual clemency commutation has.
You want me to take it? You want to take it?
Well, I can start on it, and I, you know, sort of alluded to this earlier, but we talk, you know, as Mr. Harper said, we talk a lot about the person who is the defendant and the person who is the victim as being at the heart of a criminal case. I want to dispel one thing. Oftentimes, even when we're just talking about those two people, those lines are not nearly as neat as people like to pretend that they are. Today's victim of a crime is often tomorrow's quote unquote offender, right? Because again, hurt people, and you have cycles of trauma, and you have, you know, cycles of retaliation. And, you know, there's been modeling and studies. I mean, this is not controversial if you actually look at the data and look at the research. Victims and defendants often are the same people, and the person that is facing us, like I can tell you, like in our prosecutor's office, we have people that we are prosecuting and that are also victims in cases, sometimes simultaneously, right? So that's just those two people. And then you think about the family structure and the community. To have a loved one either be the victim of a crime or go away, go to prison, that causes significant trauma on their loved ones, on their significant others, on their parents, on their children, on anybody that may have been relying on them for support. And the trauma doesn't stop, you know, when a court case is over and somebody goes away. It continues. So you want to talk about really getting to the root causes of crime, really getting to the root causes of what's impacting our community. We should be doing everything possible to, wherever necessary, avoid inflicting more trauma. And look, I am a prosecutor. I'm not like a prison abolitionist. Like I know some people like here might be, right? Like I do my job and we put people in prison, but shouldn't we be doing that only to the extent necessary to protect public safety? Public safety. I'm going to tell you a story just about how this can really impact people intergenerationally. I actually started my career as a 8th grade history teacher in New York City public schools. And my first year, I was told that there was a particular student in one of my classes that I should just let him walk out of the room if he walked out of the room, because he's a gang member. He gave everybody hell in the school, and it's not worth confronting him. I'll make my life a living hell. Okay. This kid, so I was a first year teacher, and I did not have the best classroom management skills yet. So one day the class that this kid was in was just acting a fool, right? I was not able to deliver my message whatsoever, like my lesson whatsoever. They were throwing paper balls at each other. This is before they all had phones, right? So they were throwing paper balls at each other. They were talking. I was just like flummoxed. And this kid walks in about 15 minutes later, right? He came to his class about once or twice a year. Walks in, he just looks at his classmates, acting up, looks at me and sees me, a 22-year-old new teacher struggling. He goes, Mr. Savit, do you mind if I take a shot? I calm him down. And I go, well, hell, there's nothing else I'm doing is working, so go ahead, man. He jumps up on the desk and goes, yo, everybody shut the F up. Mr. Savit was trying to teach, except he did not say shut the F up, he actually cursed. Room goes dead quiet, and he hops down off the desk. He turns to me very politely. Says, I'm really sorry I had to curse, Mr. Savit. Please proceed with your lesson. He ended up really liking the subject matter of the class that I was teaching. I taught U.S. history from the Civil War to the present. He was interested in like the military aspect of things. Like, he's a great boy, right? Like, there's cool stuff there. And he would come to school once or twice a week. But after school, he'd like say, he'd come to my class and he'd say, like, let me make up all the work I want to catch up. He'd just like hang out in my room after school. So we got talking. And one day he says to me, you know what? They call me a gang leader, don't they? I said, yeah. And he goes, I know. Because I want to let you know just what it's about. I'm not like a bad person, right? They call me a gang leader, and it's true, I have like a crew, we're looking out for each other. But my mom's locked up. We got nobody else. So when they call me a gang leader, when they say like call me that, it's not because I'm bad, it's not because I want to be, but like we gotta look out for each other, because who else is gonna look out for us? This kid was smart, charismatic, right? He had a way with people, like just evidenced by jumping on the desk and everybody just, okay, right? You put him in a different situation, he could be, I mean, he wasn't from work, but he could be the former governor of New York, right? Maybe he would have done a lot better than some former governors in New York. I have no idea what happened. I wish there was like some Hallmark ending to the story and like, went to Harper or whatever. But I have no idea. He could stop coming to school altogether halfway through the school year. I hope he's doing well. I have no idea. I want to talk about intergenerational effects. If we could have brought that child's mother back, we could have brought her back when she didn't pose a public safety risk anymore, right? And reunited her with her son. He may well have gone on to do incredible things. And maybe he still is, right? I don't know. I just don't know. But that's what it's about. Like, you miss that parent, you miss that loved one. It has significant intergenerational effects, and we cannot ignore that.
Right. Let's go. We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to implore my panelists to keep their answers as concise as possible so we can get through these, because these are some really good ones.
You know you have two lawyers on the panel.
Okay, just glad there's not a preacher on the panel. We really made it.
Oh, we got a preacher.
Okay, so Michael, let's go to you. This question is for you, and this person wants to know, how is Michigan helping and are they providing essential housing? How are we holding judges responsible, or is there something that we can do there? And then the racial disparity issues. Could you speak to those as far as Michigan and what you're finding through the project?
Well, Michigan ain't doing nothing yet, man. There's people out there trying to find housing, man. They hurt. And guys getting out of prison, it's like the attorney just spoke just a minute ago. Look, man, anytime you force pressure on a mother to raise the kids by herself, the kids gonna turn to the street, and penitentiary gonna become their mother and father. You know what I'm saying? So it just, that's the answer to the question that was presented to the attorney. But the thing is this: Michigan is so many things that Michigan could be doing, but they're not. It is, look, man, these young people need help. Thank God they got young lawyers coming up. Thank God. But the thing is, Michigan is not doing anything, and they ain't even trying, man.
Okay, so a follow to that, Governor Brown. This question speaks to that, and it's two questions that kind of follow on each other, so I'll get to both of them, answer both. What advice would you give to Governor Whitmer to get her to commute more sentences? And the second part of it, can you actually talk to her before you leave? If you're leaving, maybe you love Michigan so much you're gonna stay. And then what
I
kind?
don't know what's to knowing today.
Yeah, but it's gonna get better tomorrow. What kind of policies would you advocate for to keep people out of the criminal justice system in the first place? And how can we promote harm reduction and protect our most vulnerable citizens?
Well, that's a lot of questions.
Yes.
Let me tackle a couple of them.
Okay.
In terms of connecting with Governor Whitmer, I wish her the best. I hope she's listening in. I do have her number. We occasionally text. I'll just leave it at that. I think what I spelled out at the outset is kind of a plan I would encourage governors to use as they do this work. And I know she's being very thoughtful and methodical in her clemency work. And I know she's got a good team around her. In terms of racial justice issues, I will just say Oregon is a relatively white state. Our Black population is about 2%. Our incarceration rate of Black men is about 9%, so it's incredibly disproportionate. And we know from our Get Tough on Crime measures that were passed at the ballot through the initiative process, which I believe Michigan has as well, that Black men were incarcerated, were punished like 17 times greater than their white male counterparts. So in terms of how do we transform the system, we are going to have to deconstruct the racism in the system, and that is going to take time. And it
So how do we do that? Let's talk about it. What are some of the ways that actually can happen?
That's a really great question. So I am a lawyer. I used to work in the juvenile justice system, and I represented both parents and children in the welfare system, in the foster care system. And what we know, the data is really, really clear that if we provide families with the wraparound services and supports that they need, including housing, food, any type of counseling and support services, childcare, and early childhood education, not waiting till kids are 5 when 90% of the brain development has already started, that helps families thrive. And we know that the savings for every dollar we invest in early childhood education and early childhood care, you save $10 to $20 in prison costs. I mean, the savings are extraordinary. We have chosen as a country not to do this. We would rather spend as a country on putting people behind bars. And unfortunately, this Get Tough on Crime ethos disproportionately impacts our Black and brown communities. So we know what to do. We have to have the willpower to make it happen. And that means everyone in this room, and I'm sure everyone in this room that can is voting, but we have to be very strategic and thoughtful about how we build coalitions, making sure we get, I'll just say, unusual partners, for example, the business community working with us to both change the laws and transform the system. Justice takes time, but I know that by working together, we can make it happen.
Prosecutor Savit, this is for you, and it's sort of a follow-on to Governor Brown, because she mentioned so-called juvenile offenders. How does building a way out of the system differ for juvenile offenders compared to older individuals who can get labeled career criminals? And what resources should there be, and should that fall under the auspices of a prosecutor's office?
So yes and no. Prosecutors should not be providing direct services, right? Like, we're lawyers. Like what do we know about providing direct services? That said,
Some people say that since you have an extremely significant budget, that you, the lawyer, does not have to provide those services. But within the realm of your budget in your office, there could be a set aside for social work and social support services from the prosecutor side, just like we want to do preventative medicine and preventative healthcare to keep people out of the system, healthcare system, we want to keep them healthy. If you truly want to have the most justice, you would want to hopefully use some resources to keep people from entering the system in the first place.
Yes. Well, I started with the no, and then I was going to get to the yes. So first of all, I mean, our office budget at the very least isn't huge, and it's mostly for staff. But What I will say is we do exactly that. And that's where we do have an obligation, right? It's not that we're going to actually be providing the substance use treatment or the mentorship or the workforce development or whatever a person needs. Those should be professionals, right? That are actually trained up in doing that and not trained in being a lawyer, right? But we do pay partners. For example, we have the only pre-plea diversion program in the state of Michigan. Because what we were seeing is like we were forcing people to plead guilty to a crime because we said, oh, we need to get them services on.
Can you explain to people what that is so they understand?
Yeah. So typically, you're talking about like, let's talk about like misdemeanor offenses, right? Not that many people are going to jail for a misdemeanor offense, right? They're getting probation and they can get services on probation. They can get access to that stuff, but you got to plead guilty to do it. And if you plead guilty, you might lose your job. Or you might get kicked out of your housing. Or if you're a non-citizen, you might get deported from this country for yes, some misdemeanors, right? So under the guise of being like, oh, we're doing this compassionately, we just wanted to get help and get services, we were shooting ourselves in the foot a lot of the times, right? Because we disrupted their lives, and then we're like, but now make it better. We're gonna require you to make it better, otherwise you're in violation of probation. So we said, look, let's rewind the clock. For an offense that doesn't threaten public safety, we're not even going to require you to plead guilty. And if you do this, right, and we pay for the programs, right, if you do this and you abide by an individualized plan, right, maybe it's getting substance use treatment, maybe it's just getting trained up and getting a job, maybe it's going back to school, right, it's really individualized. And you stay out of trouble and we don't see you again for 6 months on a new offense, and you do everything we've asked you to do, case is dismissed, and you never have to check that box in the application saying you pled guilty to anything. Want to know what the recidivism rate for that program is? It's less than, well, it's not zero. Like we're working with human beings, but it's less than 5%, as opposed to like 50% for the district.
So did I hear you correctly in saying that out of the 83 counties in Michigan, you're the only county with this program?
Yes, we had to get special dispensation from the state court administrator's office to build up a sort of a pilot program.
1 out of 83, but it's a successful program.
It's very successful. Yep.
And how long has it been in effect?
A couple years now. Yeah. So it's a couple years where we're in like the hundreds of people. So it's not like, and it's not like we're just cherry picking people, right? People often just need those resources, need an off ramp. If you can give them the off ramp, right, without compromising public safety, we're talking about misdemeanors here, right? Without compromising public safety, it means that those crimes don't escalate further. We're not seeing them again. So this notion that public safety is somehow at odds with providing these services, with providing a different route forward, or indeed at odds with accountability. It's hard work a lot of times to do these programs, right? To get help, to get treatment. But you can do it successfully. We've done our job.
Well, when I was in prison, I used to sit back and read a lot. And I used to see all the different studies that they be doing about the prison system, people in the system, everything, psychiatrists, doctors, lawyers. But they do all these studies, they pay all these millions of dollars for the studies. And they be on point when they finish the studies. But they do nothing about it. They do a lot of studies and they give a lot of money to their little buddies. But they don't do nothing about it. They be right on point. The habitual offender, they need to revisit. Felony murder, they need to revisit. You know, the telephones, all that is going on. Now, they do all these studies, but don't no one do nothing about it. Where did all that money go for the studies? My thing is
Michigan law.
my thing is, the only thing, just like my slogan said, the only thing you got to do is care. That's all you got to do.
And elect more prosecutors like this one.
Not 5,000 people census here, so.
Governor Brown, I think this is a quick one. Is it more difficult to give clemency to a high-profile incarcerated person knowing their name is attached to their release in the media, et cetera?
Oh my gosh, the media in this process is absolutely brutal. There's just no question about it, and that's why it's so important to build support, build organizations that will be allies for you in this work, and third-party validators, because other people can speak and tell stories, including the families of the formerly incarcerated folks, that can be incredibly compelling. We have to reach people's hearts and we have to reach their minds. And I believe we can do that through storytelling. And it's not the politically elected, the elected official is probably not always the best person to do that.
Now, this is from Patrick Kinney. I served 26 years from age 16. I was released 2 years ago. I'm now off parole. I've studied law for over 20 years. And I now write all the briefs for the law offices of David L. Moffat and Associates. But all the law schools I have applied to have denied me. What do you think of that, especially in light of what happened to Pete Martell? And he adds, he also has an LSAT of 158. So can we talk about that? This idea that someone who has developed an expertise and an excellent in an area is still barred from perhaps whatever the area is. It could be law, it could be science, it could be medicine. It is barred from actually achieving that post clemency.
We are still a nation of second chances, and one person's bad act should not define the entire rest of their life. And we know that these sentences impact whether someone wants to go to law school or be a nurse or their other types of licensed professions. It impacts a lot of them. And that's why the pardon and expungement process is so incredibly important. I granted commutations when I felt strongly that a person had been held accountable, that they had transformed their lives, but also that they were giving back to the community. And sometimes that was behind bars. That they had done extraordinary acts that really told me they understood and were remorseful. And so those were the cases on a case-by-case basis that I granted both commutations and pardons to.
Were those the 1,147? Yeah.
Yeah. There were some of those were, there was a lot in there. 900 of them were COVID safety commutations, so that was a different category. I commuted about 900 sentences during COVID because I wanted to reduce the population during the pandemic and keep more people, frankly, healthy and alive. So I guess what I would say is continue to give back to the community, continue to fight for a pardon and expungement of your record. And there may be, I don't know what, other law schools folks have tried, but sometimes law schools, and I know the law school I went to, admit people with prior criminal histories.
And this is a follow along from a law student. And Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How can we change the stigma around clemency for, quote, violent offenders, unquote, who often get left out of movements for reform or clemency? How can folks in the legal field provide support for people coming home from prison?
Well, first of all, you got to they got to revisit, man. They got to revisit the Victim Offender Act, and they got to revisit. They got to visit the felony murder act. Those are two things. I'm not trying to skip, but I'm just trying to say I want to make sure this is clear. Those are two things that's holding a lot of people in prison: felony murder and habitual offender. And the ones who's getting affected by that is people of color.
Right.
You know, thank you. But my thing is, the only thing you got to do is revisit some of these policies that you got, like the picture felony and felony murder.
So as a prosecutor, when you hear that, what are your thoughts when Michael says that?
Well, I think, we should only be using like habitual offender designations, this is our policy, if it's necessary to protect public safety, right? And what you see so frequently.
Isn't that a broad idea? Quote unquote, necessary to protect public safety allows so much leeway to literally destroy someone's life.
It does, there's no question about it. And I don't believe in categoricals. I'm not gonna sit up here and say we never use habitual offender designation, but we use it, when I came into office. It was used just regularly. If you qualify for it, you're gonna get it, and it can increase your max sentence by up to 4 times. Right? Or up to twice as much, sorry, not
And that's the same thing as laying on charges on charges on charges.
Yeah.
Will you explain that to folks?
Yeah, right. So overcharging, right? There could be an incident, right? And you think about like a bar fight. Okay, you gotta fight at a bar. Are you gonna charge an assault every time somebody threw a punch or every time somebody, picked up a glass and threw it or whatever? You're gonna say like this was a bar fight, or like you could probably charge like, if you really look through like the videos of it, like 30 some odd offenses, right? And just stack up and get leverage and plea deals, but that's not fair, right? That's not justice. It's like one act that people did, and it's not fair to stack up charges like that. So, I mean, we're trying not to do that.
But you do it to get pleas because someone's sitting in jail for, prosecutors go to somebody sitting in jail and says, hey man, your trial's not gonna come up for 18 months, right? You're gonna sit in jail because you can't make bail. You can't make bail. So you're gonna sit in jail for 18 months. And I stacked all these charges and on top of the stack, you're facing 60 years after the stack. And so you know what though, if you plea out over here, you do 24, 36 months and you're good. Just plead guilty, you're good. 60 years, you're gonna be in jail 18 months before you even have a trial anyway. So you do an extra 18, it's over. Here's your you plead guilty. It's extortion.
Right. Yes.
It's not justice. And so that process in itself, and all the data also suggests that the people that get the stacked charges are the people of color, poor people, etc. The guy in the bar fight you mentioned, if it's a country music bar, he knows the sheriff, and the sheriff just gives him a ride home. This is just, we won't talk about this.
Or the Capitol building.
So the idea is how can we be literally uncovering justice if we allow so much leeway and discrimination within the system and the process?
So there's no question about any of this, right? That's all 100% right. And I do think that there's a couple things. One is, look, ultimately these are elected officials, right? And you've got to get the right people in place that are going to use their discretion in an appropriate way. Now, the problem with this is that for so long, the criminal legal system has operated behind a sort of black curtain, right? People do not know what goes on. There's no data, there's no transparency around racial disparities. There are studies, yeah, but like you don't know what your DA is doing day in, day out. You don't know what your judges are doing day in and day out. And I think, look, we are about to release a major transparency project, which we did with the University of Michigan and the ACLU, which identifies every point in the process where we could see racial disparities in prosecutorial decision making, from charging to plea bargaining to habitualizing to vertical overcharging to horizontal overcharging. Because honestly, I know different communities are different, right? We're watching on my thing doesn't work in every single.
So if the data comes out, if the data out of that study comes out with something substantive, to Michael's point,
yeah,
he's saying, hey, studies get done, then nothing happens. Is there a way, pre-result, to talk to a legislative body to say, hey, based off the result of this study, we don't know what the result's gonna be yet.
Yeah.
But based off the result, if there is clear systemic evidence that there's an exorbitant burden placed on a certain class of so-called offender, can we pre-release of the information have a legislative agreement that these people have a 50% reduction in sentence or categorical clemency or, whatever that remediation is, so it doesn't get lobbed into the, oh, now that the study's over, identity politics, this and that. No, this would be pre-study. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't know, honestly, because I had to see a proposal, like it's an interesting idea, but I do think, like, look, fundamentally, no matter what you think about the justice system or talk about disparities, no matter what kinds of consequences you think should be imposed, they should be imposed because of what you did, not because of who you are. And that's why measuring those disparities, looking at those disparities are so important, because, like, look, maybe you take a tougher on crime approach than the people sitting up here. Give me one good damn reason that Black people should be treated more harshly in the justice system than white people. There's not one. So
I don't know if I can help here in terms of sort of breaking this down a bit, but at least from my state in Oregon, we had a get tough on crime, multiple get tough on crime measures that transferred the discretion in the judicial system, in the criminal justice system, from the judicial branch to the prosecution. And that was a huge challenge, given that prosecutors tend to be fairly conservative. I think that's an understatement, though they are elected in Oregon. And so one of the things that we have shifted towards is electing more progressive prosecutors that have a sense of fairness, particularly around racial justice issues, and have integrity. That's one piece. The other piece that Michael referred to, the felony murder statute, which we have in Oregon, needs to be changed at the legislature. Obviously, one of the three branches of government. And the challenge in the legislative process is that it's really politically hard for elected officials to take these votes, particularly right now, to reduce criminal penalties. Because we are living in an era, at least politically, nationally, of get tough on crime. So that is really challenging. In Oregon, we were able to do it in 2019, Senate Bill 1008. The bill allowed juveniles for the first time in 20 years, juveniles who commit, allegedly, felonies, to get a second look and a waiver to stay in juvenile court. We were able to pass that bill because a Republican Black legislator who was dying at the time was the chief sponsor. And she also believed that we are a nation of second chances. So we were able to get that bill through. But it was the first time in 20 years that we've been able to make substantial legislative changes to the get tough on crime measures. So this isn't months of work, again, or years, it's probably decades of work over time. And then the third piece, I don't know who's appointing judges here, and I don't know if they're elected. I assume your governor has an opportunity to appoint judges in circumstances. Who gets appointed to the bench really matters. Michael said, or somebody said, the state court administrator made a decision about, it was you,
Yep.
made a decision about the diversion program they had. At least in Oregon, the Supreme Court Chief Justice appoints the state court administrator. In Oregon, that person is elected. So those folks are on the ballot, at least in my state, and I assume they are here too.
Yeah, same deal.
And I assume your governor plays a role in that process as well. Who is in the judicial branch really, really matters. So it goes back to my statement of elections matter, they have consequences, and it's really important that there is a coordinated strategy to get good progressives elected in these prosecutorial positions that have a lot of power in the criminal justice system, that you elect folks in the legislature who have the guts to change way out of date statutes, and that you support judicial candidates who are willing to bring a sense of fairness, justice, and equity to the judicial process.
Thank you for that. So we're gonna push hard to the end here because we're close and more questions are coming, and you all are wonderful, so thank you. A political third question did come up about bail reform from our conversation about bail. Can we talk about the issue of bail reform? The person mentions obviously that horrific case of the person in Fulton County Jail awaiting trial who was eaten alive by bed bugs and fleas and was killed and died in jail, to the point where the people who had to clean his cell had to wear hazmat suits to clean out the cell. And that happened recently. It passed, the story came out just last week. Now, in Governor Hochul in New York is doing some work around this issue as well. Can we talk about bail reform and how it fits into this kind of overall discussion?
So I mean, the news out of Fulton County was horrific, and I just want to preface the discussion on bail and pretrial detention by saying it shouldn't matter if that person was awaiting trial, had been convicted, was in jail, was in prison, whatever. Like, it is inhumane. It is absolutely horrific to allow something like that to happen in any state facility, no matter who the person was, no matter what they did. So I just want to preface it with that. Look, this conversation around bail has just gotten so convoluted and stupid, frankly. Because what bail is at its core is it is wealth-based detention. You are being held in jail based on how much money you have. Locking somebody up for, I don't know, driving with a suspended license, right? Because they don't have $1,000 to get out of jail. And by the way, probably the reason their license was suspended was because they couldn't pay the fees on it, right?
Which I remitted all the fees in Oregon retroactively. The legislature passed a bill prospectively prohibiting that from being a reason for people to be denied their driver's license. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Keep going.
Anyway, it is like, if I get, like, I'm well-to-do enough that I can pay $1,000 if I was arrested on my way home and turn out my driver's license was suspended. Somebody this poor could sit there for days, weeks, months, right? Just because they don't have $1,000 in their bank account. Then they might lose their job. Then they might lose their housing. Then, you talk about intergenerational effect, where are the kids going to live? It does not make any sense. By the same token, by the way, and I want to ask everybody that loves cash bail, meaning like the bail bonds lobby, why should you be able to buy your way out of prison if you're a murderer that happens to be rich? Because that's the other side of the equation. You have wealthy people, and by the way, wealthy people commit crimes, and wealthy people commit dangerous crimes. Domestic violence is like a very good example of that, right? So with the fact that you come up with $50,000, does that make you any less dangerous going back to the spouse you've been abusing? No. My position on it is this. Get rid of the damn thing entirely. All right. If you're dangerous, if there's an articulable reason that you're dangerous, a judge can make that determination, fine, hold you, right? If you're not, we have a presumption of innocence, you should be free pending trial. But it shouldn't be based on how much money you have in your bank account. And people act like, oh, this is a wild idea. We couldn't possibly do that. This is the system in every single state in the United States. Do you know why? Because that's how the federal court system works.
I want to say this. I walked out of prison after doing 25 years. And I still today, when I walked out of prison, I was looking around, they say I'm free. I said, free? Am I really free? And, they've been trying to take me off parole for the last 3.5 months. 3.5 months. My parole agent, everybody to sign off, even his supervisor to sign off. But they won't respond back to their own agents. They don't respond back to their own agents. And here I am, I did 25 years, and then they say I'm free. How the hell free? And you want to respond back to your own agent. They didn't file the paperwork, they did everything. And now they file a second application and they sign off and they still haven't responded back to them. So the system is broken.
Right. Yes. Right.
The system is broken. All the things I'm doing. And you still want to keep your foot on my neck. The system is broken. And somebody need to fix it.
So as we come to a close of this discussion, a number of questions came up just about fitting into the same category, but one I think is very important. Someone asked to define, because we didn't define what categorical clemency is, so folks understand that. So can we define that? But then as a follow along to that, these questions fit under what can we do now in Michigan to push for more clemency, categorical clemency, and advocate in a way that can work here in this state. Obviously, supporting Michael and the work that he's doing is a critical piece to that. And just by your presence here, that is doing that, but we have to certainly do much more if we walk out of here. But can we define these terms and then so folks can understand where they can fit in and what they can do and what work they can do? Because oftentimes folks, they feel like they want to do something, but they don't know exactly what to do to have impact and how they can lean in.
So I'll just talk about the categorical versus case by case, which we probably should have talked about at the outset, but case by case.
That's my fault, Mom.
No. Case by case is literally the governor reviews that particular case and makes a decision based on the merits or whatever of that particular case. Categorical is groups of people, and let me give you a few examples. When there was a change in the law, that was the marijuana commutations, 47,000 people, and I know it just happened here. Senate Bill 1008, I talked about that briefly. I commuted 73 young people sentenced to the parole board for them to give them an opportunity to go in front of the parole board. Extraordinary acts. We had historical wildfires in 2020. I commuted the sentences of roughly 40 adults in custody who had done firefighting on behalf of the state of Oregon and truly saved lives. I talked about, just briefly, the people who had fines and were denied their driver's license because of that. It was roughly $14 million, and I don't remember the numbers of people. The legislature had passed a bill and did it prospectively. I remitted the fines of those who were impacted by that particular bill. So it is impacting groups of people. And I mentioned COVID. It was roughly 900 folks that I commuted their sentences and let them out of prison to hopefully save lives and keep them healthy.
So Michael, can you tell us what we can do to support you and your organization and then other organizations that are doing similar work?
Well, the first thing you do, you gotta care. That's the first thing, and your heart gonna lead you to the right place. It's only if you care. But if you don't have no good intentions, it don't matter, you know what I'm saying, what you do. Because ain't nothing gonna happen, just like they've been doing these studies. My thing is, I just wish that somebody would quit talking, start doing something.
Right.
All that talking, you know, it bothers me. That's why I don't go to any potluck meetings.
Right.
You know, Because I'm not into that. I'm into action. I'm not into, a bunch of storytellers. I'm not into that. I'm not no politician. I'm not no motivational speaker.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Wait, now I was thinking about what this guy, Maurice Big Mo, he had said, he studied paralegal, he is paralegal, and he said the same thing you said. But the thing is, I just like to speak to one heart to another heart, and hope I touch the conscience of you, your conscience.
Vote, run for office, support good people running for office,
That's right.
support young people who are going to law school. Would you raise your hand? I didn't get your name in the back of the room. A 2L student here at the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a criminal justice reform clinic here at your law school, but the law school I went to, Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, does. And they pre-vetted many of these cases for me. It was called I'm sorry, I'm not going to get the name right, but they basically reviewed a bunch of cases, they used law students to prepare the cases, and they gave us the cases for Black men, and it was incredibly helpful for my team in reviewing. My team reviewed thousands of cases. So having your law school have a clinic to assist in this work, I think would be extraordinary. So those are ideas.
I echo all of that, but I think the most important thing that folks can do really is lift up the stories of people that are impacted, because so frequently there's the asymmetry, and you hear, about the stories of who they were. You're talking about commutations at the snapshot in time where they did the worst thing that they've done in their life, right? But you don't know what they've done since then. Lift up the stories of people who have come home, right? Who have come home and are now giving back to their communities, right? People gravitate towards stories, and when you sit up here with folks like Mr. Thompson, right, who is doing fantastic work, and with people that are out in the community that may have served decades and are giving back and are now, by the way, like in some cases, preventing violence from happening because they have the credibility to do so. Lift those stories up. And we live in a social media environment. Share those stories on social media. I think it's no coincidence, frankly, that both Mr. Thompson and Mr. Burton, right, there was a significant social media campaign that preceded both of these gentlemen getting commutations. That matters. Hitting that retweet button matters. Writing something on your own matters. So if we can lift up stories, I think that makes a difference because people gravitate towards that.
I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but this has been phenomenal. And certainly if there is a 30,000 foot view takeaway, it's to figure out what makes your heart beat faster and get involved somehow. And you may be sitting out there, maybe you have an intuition to run for office. Folks who have bad intentions seem to be able to run candidates all the time. And oftentimes folks who have better intentions, we don't have quite as many candidates. So if you have some inkling in your heart and soul to run for library board, school board, anything, run, and support Michael and support what he's doing. These organizations don't run for free. So if you have it in your heart to write a check and support the work, please do that as well. Please give it up for this amazing panel.
to speak about the person that shows no humanity.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'm Robin. I work with the Sentence Commutation Project here at Michigan Law School. We were happy to partner with the Michael Thompson Clemency Project and the ACLU to put this event on. We are a group of about 30 law students that provide advocacy for people who are applying for or who have received a hearing for commutation. And I had the pleasure of working with Jimmy Burden last fall. I was with his family as they awaited his release and got to see him when he was reunited with his family. And when I reflect on his case, what strikes me is how many people fought so long for his freedom. He fought for his own freedom for 40 years, as did his family. I see his niece Carmen here tonight, some of his family who have passed while he was incarcerated. The Michael Thompson Clemency Project got involved and got scores of people to call on his behalf. This is why we cannot rely on case-by-case clemency. We must have categorical clemency because it should not take that much time, that much energy, and that many people just to get one man free.
That's right.
If you know someone who's working on a commutation application, please reach out to us if you want support. We are not lawyers, we are only students, but you can reach out to us at commutationproject@umich.edu. We made a recording of this event. We will make that public for people. As we leave, there's food down the hall and a space further down the hall where we can gather and talk. And before we head out, I want to thank so much Harper for really fantastic moderation. Thanks for keeping everyone honest. Thank you all so much.